We welcome to the show Peter Mitchell. How's it going?
It's going very well. Thanks, Chris, and it's a pleasure to be with you.
Great. Of course, your father, James Mitchell, created When the Boat Comes In. What do you think was so special about the show?
Yeah, it's a good question. Do you know that the truth is, I didn't realize how special it was until about series three, because I'm from the northeast of England. I was born in the northeast of England. I was brought up in South Shields, the town on which Shield is based. The location where the stories are set. And I could understand why people, as a teenager, I could understand why people in my immediate area were talking about this. Not many dramas were filmed on location in the regions in those days. It was, it was a bit of a groundbreaker in that, using local actors, local accents. So I could understand the local buzz around it. But it was when I went to university in Manchester and I stayed in a hall of residence, quite a large hall of residence. And I was walking through the reception area one night, and the normally deserted TV lounge was absolutely packed with people watching When the Boat Comes In. And it absolutely took me completely by surprise. Um, and what was it about it that attracted them? I think it was, although it was period drama, it wasn't posh period drama. It was featuring normal, everyday people with normal, everyday struggles of the time. And I think a lot of people related to the storylines and the characters. And I think in Jack Ford, my dad created a most unusual protagonist, often described as a lovable rogue. But if you've read it as often as I had, he's more rogue than lovable, really. Um, and that, I think, was its magnetism.
Yeah. And it's such an addictive series, isn't it, as well, when you watch it?
It is addictive, but it's hard for me to comment because I obviously think it's great, but I've got to I have to declare an interest. Um, you know, I, it came at a point in my dad's writing career where he had just had a major success on ITV with Callan, and from being a kind of jobbing writer on a series like The Troubleshooters, and he wrote some Z cars. He wrote bits of other people's creations, and then Callan took off, which was his creation, and it became such a success. Um, and he'd made a name for himself within broadcasting circles. So this was the BBC's attempt to kind of uh, tempt him back, because Callan was originally a BBC project, which they turned down, became a massive hit on ITV. They lured him back to make a series, and the result of that was When the Boat Comes In.
And did your father base this on real life people?
He based it on a mix of people that he knew that were part of his childhood. My grandfather, on that side of the family, on dad's side, my grandfather was a fitter in the shipyards. He was a local politician. He was a leader of the Labour group on the local council. He was regional chair of the TUC. He was very much a union man, a Labour man. And I think a lot of the political strands of When the Boat Comes In come from Dad's memories from being a small boy, sitting around the kitchen and listening to the grown-ups talk politics. And I think that's where a lot of it comes from. And I think his another key feature of the series is strong women. It's often the women who pick up all the bits, who cope, who feed, who care for, who nurture. And working class communities all over the world, never mind England or the UK. It's the women who do the coping, who provide the strength to keep the family going when times get tough. And I think that that also is a feature, and he experienced all of those things. So yeah, I think there were facets of certain individuals that perhaps he didn't know because he was a little boy, but he heard and remembered, or he saw and remembered. And I think that's certainly true.
Yeah, Bella was definitely one of those characters, wasn't she?
Oh yes, Bella, without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, she's a tremendous character. Who, with all her strength, with all her godliness, has her vices too. And yeah, she's a very rich character. And if you're from a working class community, everybody knows a Bella. Everybody. From my youth. I mean, I'm in my 60s now, and from my youth, there were plenty of Bellas around. And I don't believe it's a particularly northern thing. I think it's a class thing.
Yeah. And you mentioned the politics. The politics was really interesting, actually. It wasn't, when you hear politics in a lot of shows, it can be a bit, but this was really interesting and entertaining.
Yes, the politics of its time was interesting. I mean, the rise of the Labour Party to dominance, and you know, as I said, I was born in South Shields. South Shields was one of those constituencies that had never had, I think it's still true to this day, it has never ever had a Conservative MP, even though the constituency was formed in 1832. It's one of only a handful. Before Labour, it was Liberal. And as soon as Labour became electable, that's all it's been ever since. So his dad's background will have been steeped in it. And with that within that Labour movement, it's the relationship between, which comes out in the series from series 2, that relationship between the unions and the Labour Party, which still to a much lesser extent continues to this day. But certainly, during my life, when I worked for a while as a political editor, through the late 80s and early 90s, it was the same then, where the unions would want their Labour Party, which they considered their possession, to go in a particular direction, and the politicians didn't want to go quite down that road, and the tension that resulted. And yet this mutual reliance one upon another and payback time. It becomes a topic for high drama in those kind of crucibles that to a lesser extent, but they do exist today.
And you mentioned series 2. This is when Jack Ford takes over the Fitters Union. This is one of my favourite series, I think.
I love the I love the storylines when he's um, union secretary. I think in many ways that's a job that's made for a Jack Ford. You know, where he has to play the yard owners at their own game, um, and yet exercise this tension and win these battles with Labour as well, to make sure that the whole thing is moving forward. First of all, for Jack's benefit, but in general, what is for Jack's benefit can also benefit others, could even benefit the community at large, and that. I think you're right. I think that is my favorite series as well. It's also when the actors are getting into their stride. They're really getting into their stride. You rarely see the best performances of any series in series one. It's usually, when they get up to speed and they really know their character and they get their timing right with their colleagues, and the whole thing kind of flies. And certainly, I think that was the case with series two. There was a real power to series two, and it was still anchored within one single community.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
And
up to
that's
series three it was, wasn't it? And then with the
yeah.
last series, it moved away from the original community.
Precisely, precisely. And I think that I think, yeah, I think there are a number of reasons for that, but it was at its most, it was purring along in series two, I think.
Yeah, and even how Jack becomes the head of the Fitters Union is really brilliant, isn't it? At the end of the first series.
It is. That's his, I think that's his military intelligence training coming to the fore. And I also love, having got there. Um, that first opener of series two, Ask for Tuppence, Take a Penny, uh, is also brilliant. It's brilliantly done, I think,
Yeah, this is with Les Mallow, isn't it?
with Les.
Actor
Well, yes, and Les
who
is always,
changed.
yes, he's the hard left Puritan throughout. He's the moral compass of the entire thing, um, and brilliantly played. Uh, Les is the idealist. Now, one wonders today whether would Les be a member of the Labour Party or would Les be a member of the Green Party? I wouldn't like to say.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is about Jack, though, as you say, he'll do whatever it takes to make the deal, won't he? He hasn't got principles really. He just wants to get the best deal for himself and his members.
He's wise enough to know where the power lies, but he doesn't want he doesn't want to stay there. It's his ambition that drives him. And to Jack's success is the big country house. It is the trips to London. It is the high life. It is the jewels. It is the cognac. It is the cigars. That's but that's Jack's idea of success.
Whereas with Matt Headley, it was very different, wasn't it? He was still
Very
very happy
different.
at the Bluebell having a pint, wasn't he?
Absolutely. And a fish out of water elsewhere. This is his best mate, Matt, with whom he served in the First World War. And, Matt's the stayer. Matt thinks, to get a job as Jack's deputy in the Fitters Union is the ultimate. This is something beyond his wildest dreams. Bless him. And for Jack, it feels as if Jack's in the job for 5 minutes.
It's just the beginning for Jack.
Just the beginning for Jack. He's boarded the train, but it hasn't yet left the station.
So is series two your favorite series, you'd say?
Yeah, I would say it is. Yeah, I think so. I think it is my favorite. I think series two as a series is my favorite. But I'll always have a place in my heart for series 1, episode 1.
This is where Jack and, of course, Jesse meet for the first time at the Picture House. That's a
In
great
the
scene.
cinema. That's right. That's right. That's right. And I watched that. How old was I in 1976? I'd be 16. Because it was January 76 it started. I was sat at home with my mum, and my parents were divorced. They split when I was 6, and Dad lived in London at this stage. He'd remarried. He lived in London, in Kensington, and I was in South Shields at home with Mum. But she wanted me to see this because I'd been too young to watch Callan. She thought it not appropriate for a young boy. So I'd never seen Callan, but this was the first time I'd seen any of Dad's work on the TV. So I was just so impressed with it. I thought it was so good. And I asked my mum if I could ring him, and she said, yeah, even though it was a long distance call, I could ring my dad. And we talked about it as soon as it finished airing. I got through and we chatted. Yeah, it was quite a thing. Quite a thing. And of course, it changed a lot of. It changed within the Northeast, in particular. My father wrote many things. He wrote over 40 published novels. He wrote lots of TV. He'd done Callan. All of that's kind of irrelevant. He's When the Ball Comes In, writer James Mitchell. That's my dad, and to a certain extent, that's followed me all my life.
Yeah, speaking of which, you took on his legacy because you wrote the book, didn't you, Jack High? And you also did the stage show.
I did Jack High, and I did Jack High for a couple of reasons. The way the series was commissioned, there was a 2-year hiatus between season 3 and season 4. And the way the thing worked, there was a real time gap in storylines. So I thought I'd write something to fill it. So I did. And I really enjoyed it. I also wanted to find out if I could write long form, because I hadn't done anything like that. So I really only wrote it selfishly for me. A friend of mine read it and he said, "Oh, you should just publish it yourself." So I did, but I did, and I did, and I massively enjoyed the process. I did. And then the theatre thing was very different. The theatre thing was really, it was something that the local Customs House Theatre in South Shields had wanted to do. And they had a very particular idea of how they wanted it to be. They wanted it to follow the series very closely. So it was a theatre adaptation of book 1, in effect. It was just great. There's some fantastic lines in there, and we had a lot of fun doing it. I kind of wanted to do something a bit more esoteric and just have like a 3, possibly 4 character, make it more specifically for theatre. But the theatre itself wanted me to retell the story with some local actors or professionals, all of that, extremely good. extremely good, and they took to it really well, and I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. I'd never worked in theatre before. I've done. My background's in news, print, TV, mostly factual, a little bit of drama documentary, but mostly factual, either current affairs or news based or features based. But I've never done any theatre. And I have to say, what a lovely bunch of people they were to work with.
Right.
Tremendous.
And with the
Yeah.
book Jack High, I haven't read it yet. Shame on me. But with this book, does this cover Jack's time in America when he was bootlegging?
No, no, no. It's set up here and in London.
Oh, okay. So what's it roughly about to get us the idea?
It's about Jack.
That is very rough.
It's an imagining of at the point of the book. Jack is wealthy. Right, he's not on his downers; he's on his uppers. He's not on his uppers, but he's on the up. And he has, so he's staying in a posh hotel down there. He's got money. He gets involved with a peer of the realm, and who has a stately home in the northeast, and that is based around more or less where I live. I live in a tiny village in Northumberland now. I've been here for 10 years. And this village is part of a National Trust estate. And just down the road, about a mile down the road, is a National Trust stately home called Wallington Hall. And Wallington Hall was the family home of the Trevelyan's, a very political family. And they've had Conservatives and Whigs in their ranks, going back in time. But it was Sir Charles Trevelyan who gave Wallington Hall to the nation, gave it to the National Trust. And he turned, I think by the time he kind of retired from public life, he'd gone so far to the left, I think he's been described as the communist by some, but he was definitely moved to the left wing of politics. And that kind of interested me. So I've used a little bit of that in the northern setting for this. But Galashiels still plays a fairly prominent role within it. Although not everybody is pleased to see Jack when he goes back there.
No. And the reason I thought it was perhaps when he was in America is because we don't see any of that, do we, of course?
Well, no, but that would be for reasons of finance.
Yeah, I presumed that, yeah. I think today they could do it.
Even the American wasn't American.
No.
David Graham, the actor, who played his I can't remember his name, the character name now. But who played his buddy.
Morty, was it? I think it was Morty.
Morty, that's right. Well, Morty was played by an actor called David Graham, who I met. He became quite a friend of the family, David. And they couldn't even afford a proper American actor. They afforded David. And he was excellent, but he was British.
Yeah, I think Susan Jameson said that they ran out of money towards the end of when the boat comes in.
Well, I'm not sure that's the case, It doesn't really work like that. It's never worked like that.
Okay.
You don't run out of money. There's not a pot of money that is allocated, and you start with season 1, and then when you run out of it, you've got to stop. That's not the way it works.
Okay.
Every season is budgeted for specifically, and it had been off for 2 years, and they brought it back for season 4. So they brought it back for a reason, but they brought it back because whatever they were putting in its place wasn't working. So the first thing they did was can we go back to something that was working? But by then, I think, I think Dad found season 4 difficult to write
Yeah.
because I think he felt it had run its course. So he had to go on with the whole thing. And he did it. And he'll have enjoyed it because he loved to write. And he'll have been flattered. He'll have been absolutely flattered that they've asked him back completely.
I mean, there are some great episodes in that series. A Gift from
Yeah.
Heaven's really
Yeah.
good, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. There are gems in, the what I love is the market stall with the fire damaged cans. I think that's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And Rosalind is brilliant in that as well.
Yeah, she is fantastic. That's who we spoke to last time, and she says
Yeah,
hello. And she did see your theatre show, so she
yeah, she
enjoyed it.
did. Yeah, I
So,
remember her being there. Yeah. I do. Uh, a lovely lady. She was so good, so good, and really good with Jack. I mean, with Jimmy Bolan, the timing between them is fantastic. They had some real chemistry going on there. It was good, really good performances. I think brought out the best in each other, which is tremendous, tremendous. But that, I think he was blessed with his cast, absolutely blessed.
oh yeah, some fantastic performances, and
Yeah,
it's the
yeah.
characters, isn't it? I think obviously the era and the time period, but it's the characters. I think that's what you watch it for.
Absolutely, it is, without a doubt. It's in certain series will do that. In my life, the most influential TV series, nothing to do with Dad, was The West Wing. The West Wing, ABC TV in the States, Channel 4 in the UK, Martin Sheen, Bradley Whitford. And the best thing, Aaron Sorkin, the screenwriter, his baby, it is just brilliant. And I would hate to tell you how many times I've seen it, and I'm currently rewatching it again because I haven't seen it in about 3 or 4 years. But I think the point I'm making is there are certain series that touch you quite profoundly, and those are things you go back to. And of course, the wonderful thing is now, in days of streaming, you can go back to these things and relive those moments again and again and again, which is tremendous.
Yeah, and sadly, John Nightingale died very young, didn't he?
John,
Very
yeah, he
sad.
did. Yes, he did. Yeah. And he was, I don't think John, in a way, John was kind of, I don't think he was really known before the series, and he was so good. He was so good. You know, yeah, yeah, yeah. It's very sad.
It
Very
was.
sad.
Of course, his character Tom had many
Um,
different roles in it, didn't he? He was a gardener. He
well,
was,
he was first and foremost a pitman. Well, he was
yeah,
a putter down the pit. He was the guy who shoved the tubs along the lines when his father was hewing. They worked as a double act, so they worked shoulder to shoulder at every shift. So, that was Tom.
and then eventually he becomes a scab, and this is for his
He's a
wife to
strike
get the
breaker.
medicine. So
Yeah. And his wife's got TB, and sadly passes away. He turns to thieving. We have all of that, and then he becomes a gardener. Um, he's such a great character, Tom. When you when you compare him to, if you look at where he's come from, look at who his sister is, you look at who his dad is, you look at who his mother is, and he goes off the rails because he loses this love of his life. he was devoted to Mary. They've got the son Tommy, little Tommy, and he, he gets resentful because he feels he's been dealt a hand he doesn't deserve. And then and then then of course, because of the thieving, he ends up in prison. And who should be in the cell next door?
Jack Ford, yeah. And then
It's
when he gets
brilliant.
out, there's a razor gang, isn't there, from Glasgow?
Yeah. Oh yes, there's the Razor. Oh yes, the Razor Gang. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was scary. That's right. They have that scrap on the beach. Absolutely. Wow.
And then, of course, he runs off with Dolly, and that's very
It runs up
interesting
with
for their friendship.
Matt's sister Dolly. That's because he gives way to the temptations of the flesh, and that's so. And then Tom takes Dolly when she's married still to Jack. She's it's a big deal in the 1920s. It's a massive deal. So yeah, I mean, it was kind of, if you describe the storylines out loud, you would think, well, it's kind of like it's a bit soap opera-y, it's a bit EastEnders-y. But it was not. It was beautifully captured and wonderfully delivered by that cast. Those stories, and the stories were never unbelievable. They were never far-fetched. It was everyday stuff. You know, really. I mean, let's face it. I mean, infidelity's been around since Adam was a boy. So those storylines, although people were shocked by it, a lot of that was feigned. It's as long as there's been men and women on the planet, those things can happen. And it was that, and I think that was it. That was the attraction. It was the reality, and a lot of it was misunderstood. A lot of people thought, going into season 2, going into season 3, that Jack was essentially a genuine left-wing political leader who was going to emerge as a great community savior. They actually did believe that. And my dad did get letters from people, of a Labour persuasion being really disappointed that.
For me, I think he's the best of both worlds because he wants to get on, he wants to make money, but he wants to help other people as well. So I can kind of see that.
Doesn't mind helping people, but it's not a motivation.
Unless you
Yeah,
crossed him.
it's
If you
it's
crossed him,
it's more of a to Jack. Helping people is more of an optional extra.
yeah, it's an
It-
afterthought, but he
yeah,
does it. He doesn't have to.
yeah, he's not against it. He doesn't think it's a bad idea. He just wouldn't put himself out to do it. That's Jack. I mean, Jack's. He knows it's all number one. It's all number one for Jack.
Yeah, I mean,
And again, and it's only really touched on a little bit, but all the stuff about what he got up to in Murmansk during the war, after the war, 1919. Um, it's all very shady. It's all a bit nasty. It's all a bit grubby. Um, and that, I think, and that experience when he talks about, was it the Russian countess he talks about? Is she a countess or a princess or something?
yeah.
That is, if you think about it, that's going to be Jack's only interaction with the real wealth up to that point in his life, because he wouldn't have encountered it before.
Mm.
He's born and brought up in Galashield, impoverished household, into the army, grafts through the army, makes sergeant. Oh, sorry, shipyard first, because he did his apprenticeship, then into the army, then fought all the way through the war from 14 to 18, then into military intelligence, then to Russia. Then he meets then he sees what can be bought with money. He
Yeah.
experiences that life then, and then he brings it home. He
Mm.
brings that desire to be successful, to be really successful. He brings that home with him.
And you do find a lot of entrepreneurs, they do start off with nothing, don't they? They come from very poor backgrounds.
Yeah, yeah, you do. You do. Yes, I can think of a few who've, especially those, I think, those who become successful at sales. Those have that bit of the market trader in them. The
Gift
really
of the
good
gab.
sales, really good salespeople, really fast talkers, really fast thinkers. And I think that's a driving force. Yeah, it's interesting, the makeup of the entrepreneur. It is. But that's not Jack. Jack's not an entrepreneur.
No, but I mean, eventually he seems to become one, or he nearly does, doesn't he? But then, obviously, when it's series four, it all comes crashing down.
Does he become an entrepreneur? In what way is he an entrepreneur?
I think he's very
Really?
entrepreneurial in the sense that he would see an opportunity, take it, use it to his advantage, and then move
But
on to
that's not
the.
the same as, an entrepreneur is somebody who has a great business idea and then grafts to make it work.
Hmm.
That's that. I mean, to have opportunity in common, I grant you that. But Jack doesn't want to do any work. He,
Don't blame
he's
him.
a, he's, you know, he's a, he sees an opportunity for the fast buck. He
Yeah.
wants to make his money quickly. He wants to. He doesn't mind. I mean, trading in shares and stuff like that. He's quite into that. Quite good at that.
It's
And
like at the
but
end
even
of it's like at the end of series one, where he does eventually get the job, just before he gets the job, and he
yeah,
protects the widow and her furniture. And
yes,
Dolly
yes, yes, yes.
thinks that, oh no, he's going to prison. And of course, it's all part of Jack's master
It's
plan, isn't
all
it?
part of his. It's all part of the election plan. That's, it's not really entrepreneurial though. It's really opportunistic
It's clever. And of course,
and manipulative.
yeah, that's why
And
Susan Jameson says, Jessie says, you cunning bastard, doesn't she?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. It is.
that's a great
It's got a
scene.
great. He has a fantastic degree of cunning. There is no doubt. Yeah, and she delivers that line with such relish. It's brilliant actress. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. Love her.
And what did you think of the ending of the show? Obviously, that series is very different, but Jack dies in the
Yes,
last series.
yes, 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 yes. The other thing about the series is there are certain obsessions of my dad's who will make an appearance throughout the entire run, and in the end, the Spanish Civil War was an obsession of my dad's. He was fascinated by it, and he read a lot about it. Not surprising from that point of view. Um, I think he might have regretted it. I think he might have. I'm not sure what the politics were because this is the trouble. When you've worked in TV, particularly when you get to a certain level, not at senior exec level on a drama series like that, there will be a lot of discussion between the writer and the exec producer, head of drama probably as well, maybe even the program controller, as to how this thing is brought to a conclusion. And I'm not totally convinced that my dad would have done that. He might have left him as if dying on the beach,
And you'll never know.
and you'd never know. That's much more of a dad ending.
Hmm.
Death is a finality, and I'm not sure. I think he might have been. I think he was kind of persuaded to end it, which I don't think he would have wanted to do, because you never know. And the other thing is, the other interesting thing is, the TV series is one thing, but the books are another thing. He had a stream of books, and after he killed him, he never went back to finish the series run of books. There's no book on series 3. There's no book on series 4. There's only 1 and 2.
And I mean, it's probably because you fall in love with the characters, don't you, even as a viewer? But if you create it,
Well, yeah, without a doubt, you do. You do. And, as he got older, he, really, what happened was, in the 90s, fairly early 90s, 92, 93, his second wife died. She passed away. And by that time, Dad had stopped writing for TV largely and was only writing novels. And he, rather than live on his own in London, he thought he would come back and live in the Northeast again. So he moved back here, and I was based here. And he became ill and he couldn't get around much, and so he was kind of housebound. And therefore, we were talking about projects he could do, things he could write. And he's probably wrote maybe 10 or 11 When the Boat Comes In short stories that have never been seen.
oh wow,
He went back to his 2 most famous protagonists. He went back to David Callan and Jack Ford.
That'd be interesting.
The funny thing was, as I say, he was a lot older. He was not well. A lot of the Callan stuff was fairly incoherent. The When the Boat Comes In stuff isn't. It's really good. And then, they're only short stories, but they're really, really good. And I find that interesting. He somehow couldn't, because they wanted to make Callan contemporary, and his grip on the contemporary world was less than his grip on the past when he was a child. It was still crystal clear. It's quite interesting. Quite interesting.
Well, thanks a lot for joining us. It's been great speaking to you.
No, my absolute pleasure, Chris. My absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for asking me. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'm delighted that a man as young as yourself should be spreading the gospel of When the Boat Comes In.
Great. Thanks a lot, Peter. Thanks for joining us.
Cheers, Chris. Take care.
You too.
Bye.